Welcome to the first ever RealWear Summit. Woo! Yes, exactly. My name is Chris Agos. I'm going to be your front-end stage-mounted Summit optimization engineer today. That's a snappy little title I just gave myself since everyone else up here is going to have a great title. I didn't want to be the only guy without one. So I'm excited to be here today, not only because it's going to be a great event, but today's kind of a special day for me personally. Now, I'm sure most of you have met or at least talked to Andy Lowery, CEO of RealWear, but I'm betting that there aren't too many people here who have known him as long as I have. Andy and I went to elementary school together. We also went to high school together. And in fact, Andy is the reason why I attended that high school. It's kind of a long story, but basically our town had a couple of high schools, and I was transferring in from another school in the middle of our freshman year, and so I had a choice of which school to attend. And Andy was the only kid that I knew in either school. So I figured if that place was good enough for him, it was good enough for me. So I called him and I said, "Hey man, I'm going to be transferring into your school." And he's like, "Wow, that's really great." And I asked him if he'd show me around and kind of hang out with me, and when I got there, and he said he would. And on my first day, he was absolutely no help whatsoever. He showed me around, he helped me make some friends, but fast forward to a couple of months ago, and we had lunch, and he asked me to work on a couple of things with him, and here I am today. So after years of doing stuff together as kids, he's got a company, I work on a TV show, Chicago PD on NBC Wednesdays at 11, check it out. And we're doing grown-up stuff together, so I think it's pretty cool. And we get to do it here at the Devil's Canyon Brewery. It's really a beautiful place. It's super cool. They rolled out the red carpet for us. They're letting us take over not only this space, but also their brewery operations area. And we're going to see some great things back there, so we thank them for that. I just want to get one thing out of the way early. Yes, there will be beer today, but not now. I know it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but trust me, you're going to want to have a clear head to fully process everything you're going to see and hear today. Our mantra is free your hands. You're going to hear a lot about what we mean and how RealWear aims to free the hands of connected industrial workers the world over. But it's no secret that nearly all of us almost always have something occupying our hands. Electronic devices, papers, car keys, children. I mean, if you're a parent, depending on the age of your child, your hands are occupied in different ways, right? When they're first born, it's like this. Yeah. And as they become toddlers, it's kind of like this, like whoa, 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 whoa. And then they grow up a little bit and they get an attitude and an opinion, and then it's like this. Don't do that, right? I myself, we have 2 kids at home. My wife and I have twin boys. They're 7 now, but if there ever was a time when I wished for a third hand, it was during this phase, believe me. We imagine most connected industrial workers feel exactly the same way, except hopefully without the sense of panic that comes with having 2 infants at the same time. In many ways, today is a celebration of those workers. The blue and gray collar workers, the guys and girls who are out there in the field, they're on the floor, they're working on our oil rigs, or they're servicing our fire and security panels, or they're maintaining our airplanes. They deserve to have the best tools because they make modern civilization possible. I mean, the guys and girls who keep our wireless infrastructure intact, you know, if someone's up on a mobile tower and they're not happy, that could be really disastrous for the rest of us, right? I mean, he flips a switch and then suddenly we have to actually talk to people face to face. I mean, really, who wants to do that, right? I expected a laugh there. Just imagine the mass hysteria if Facebook went down for a half hour. The point is, workers are always juggling things on the job. They've got their electronic devices, but they also have flashlights. They've got tools, checklists. They need a free hand to close a valve or grab a cable or simply to maintain their balance. And they're juggling these items in environments that can be wet, dirty, loud, dusty. They shouldn't have to do that. No one should have to have a special resume item that reads, "Good at pretending I have a third arm." RealWear aims to make their jobs inherently easier and inherently safer too. And look, I don't need to tell you that when jobs are safer, the whole enterprise wins, right? It's obviously a win for workers who can go about their jobs quicker and with more confidence, but giving workers both hands free at all time means greater uptime, lower friction, amazing return on investment for companies. Obviously, we're talking about fewer accidents, but also what once took 2 workers can now be accomplished by 1. More experienced employees can remotely mentor newer team members, meaning continuous on-the-job upskilling, lower training costs, and those younger workers are going to buy into the process even more because it uses such cool tech. So these are just some of the ways that we're cultivating a safer, faster, and smarter workforce. You're going to hear many more as the day progresses. But the real star of today's show is the RealWear HMT-1, the world's first rugged, head-mounted, voice-activated Android tablet for complete hands-free use by connected workers in dangerous, confined, wet, or loud environments. This is not a traditional tablet form factor that's been ruggedized. It's not a pair of re-engineered consumer-oriented glasses, nor is it a set of immersive AR or VR goggles. It differentiates itself from those things in many different ways, all of which you'll hear about today. But perhaps most significantly, the HMT is a gateway platform and growth catalyst upon which thousands of hardware, software, and service companies will build and deliver added value to customers. In the same way that the iPhone unlocked the power of the mobile and the social web and served as the launch platform for Facebook, Twitter, and all the other names you know, the RealWear HMT product line will deliver on the promise of the industrial internet. The billions of dollars in new vendor revenues, nearly $2 trillion in productivity improvements, and over $175 billion in direct cost reductions. That is what the RealWear team aims to facilitate, and that is why we brought you all here today. So let's get right to it. Our first speaker is Mr. David Krebs, Executive Vice President, VDC Research. David has more than 10 years experience covering the markets for enterprise and government mobility solutions, wireless data communication technologies, and automatic data capture research and consulting. David focuses on identifying the key drivers and enablers in the adoption of mobile and wireless solutions among mobile workers in the extended enterprise. So put your hands together and please welcome Mr. David Krebs.
Great, good morning. Great honor to be here today. I've known Sanjay for many, many years now, dating back to some previous engagements he had. So when he called me up about a month and a half ago to share with me what he had been up to and what the RealWear team was up to, it sounded like a really exciting opportunity. So maybe just by way of a brief introduction, a little bit about VDC Research for those of you who don't know us, and I assume there are probably a couple of you in the room. So we're a sort of a full-service primary research strategy advisory firm. We've been in business for about 40 years. I've been with the company for about 20. And one of the practice areas, what we do exclusively and what we focus on really all day long is really looking at how mobile technologies are being applied in enterprise and public sector use cases to support what we classify as sort of the frontline mobile worker. So the worker who is supporting business-critical, mission-critical types of applications. And we've been doing that probably for the past 15 years, really since the advent of Wi-Fi and the ratification of 802.11b, if you remember those days, and since the advent of standardization on an operating system, pre-iOS. Microsoft was sort of, even in this space, king of the hill. And we've really sort of, followed how or experienced how the technology has evolved, has become more powerful, has become more affordable, has become smaller, and how organizations have really benefited from this, especially as we think about how we work today and how we access information, how we communicate, how we collaborate. One of the segments that we spend a fair amount of time on is this wearable segment. We've been very sort of intrigued by its potential. And I say potential here because it's never really been fully realized for a number of reasons, and I'll sort of share a couple of at least my opinions about this. But we've been tracking this space since the days of, I don't know if anyone remembers the name Zybernaut and some of their initiatives, and there have been a lot of really great attempts at doing what essentially what RealWear is finally delivering on today. So we're really seeing the combination of a number of, or the confluence, if you will, of a number of sort of key technical and commercial trends that have opened up this opportunity, and that's what makes us particularly excited about what this category means. So, not to spend too much time on sort of the history lesson, but if you've been following sort of key tech trends, there's sort of this tech cycle that we go through, and it typically revolves around about a 10-year, 15-year cycle, where we've gone from mainframe to mini computing to personal computing to the advent of internet-based computing, and now recently, and I say recently, probably in the last 15 or so years, sort of the opportunity around mobility and the mobile internet, and what that really has meant as we see trends around cloud and cloud connectivity and really pushing a lot of intelligence and information out to the cloud. I think goes hand in hand with some of the trends around mobility in the sense that how are we architecting these mobile solutions? Where is this information residing? So I think we're sort of in the midst of that right now. We certainly haven't fully realized what it truly means to be a mobile organization. We've certainly seen very, very significant successes when we're looking at workflows across logistics and manufacturing and retail and healthcare. But even today, 2017, when we look at true, sort of workflow transformation around mobile solutions, I still think we're, still pretty much, at the early phases and the early goings for a lot of organizations. Still a lot of manual processes, still a lot of paper being pushed out there, still a lot of the paper being printed out there in terms of accessing, manuals and, tech reports and such. So lots of opportunities still, but certainly a lot of development. And now we have sort of this wearable, category that's evolving, and this whole notion of hands-free, which again is so critical when we're thinking about that frontline, that business critical, that mission critical mobile worker. How can we? Because they're using mobile solutions to be able to do their jobs better, to do it in a more safe capability or environment, to be more efficient, to deliver better services. So anything that can be done to enable the use of hands for their workflow, they certainly will benefit from. So really quite an interesting time. So I just want to go through a couple of key sort of, I would say, seminal technologies that either are directly or indirectly influencing or opening up this space. So one of the technologies that we've covered at BDC, we spent a lot of time looking at, is the whole notion of automatic identification and barcode scanning and radio frequency identification, which has really transformed, when you think about supply chain, when we think about retail operations, really has been a transformative technology. So the advent of what initially was the laser barcode scanner has now evolved into sort of image capture and vision-based solutions, was extremely critical. And it enabled, again, this automatic identification, this automatic capturing of data that was encoded within these very simple linear barcodes. But what happened once the technology, Jerry Schwartz over at Simple Technologies and his gang, obviously a fantastic success story. But what really opened up eventually was as we took this technology and miniaturized these engines, and we started to say, okay, wait a second, we can take the scan engine and we can embed it in any number of different types of devices, including mobile devices. So no longer are we taking a product and bringing it to the scanner. We have that scanner in our pocket. and we're able to go to the product, if you will. And you're able to sort of open up that mobile scanning capability. So I think that and we've seen some very interesting developments in terms of now not only scanning of barcodes, but vision-based capabilities in terms of identification of information. That's only continuing to further that trend. Another one, and an equally important one, was this whole notion of the multi-touch interface and the multi-touch display. Before the iPhone came out, when we thought about mobile devices, and the interpretation of mobile still had a very PC-centric sort of flavor to it. It was, I'm trying to take what I'm doing on my PC and I'm sort of shrinking it down and trying to throw it into a mobile form factor. And that was, at the end of the day, Microsoft's great sort of, I guess, mistake or big mistake when it came to its mobile initiatives. So when the iPhone came out, leveraging technology not developed necessarily or initially by Apple, but rather by Sony, but the idea of being able to interface in an extremely intuitive and extremely easy manner, and to do so on a mobile device, pinching, zooming, doing whatever, was obviously, that really was sort of the transcendent moment in terms of truly being able to sort of think about what we can do with mobility and overcoming some of those sort of user interface limitations that mobile devices were straddled with. Now we're getting into some of the more recent developments, and I think these are all sort of critical in opening up these opportunities around wearable solutions, and that's certainly voice interface and natural language capabilities. So we've been looking at how organizations are leveraging voice technology. Some of the best use cases today are in sort of warehouse environments. We're using voice for picking, but the technology has been a little bit, it's a lot of it is sort of speaker dependent, so you have to be trained, and the technology is somewhat costly. So we've seen that significantly evolve, where again, it's much more intuitive now. So now we can, have conversations almost with mobile devices, give instructions, and do it in a much more sort of normal and natural capacity. So that, again, what that really does is now I no longer have to use my hands, so to speak, to be able to interface, and I can direct commands to the mobile device in terms of searching for information, in terms of transacting applications. The display technology. This is another one. So if I'm interfacing, with a device using my voice, what am I looking at, and where is that display? If I can miniaturize that display and project it or have it in front of me in a wearable capacity, leveraging some of the advances around micro displays, it really provides that hands-free computing, that contextual experience that this technology ultimately promises. Certainly some key companies there. I mean, I would still say TBD in terms of, who the real winners are, but some really significant advances we've seen as it pertains to that capability. And this is now, looking at something that isn't, I would say, quite ready for prime time, but I think, has absolutely transformative opportunity. And that's the whole notion of sort of holographic computing, and the idea that I can take sort of in sort of a 3D capacity information and present it, and interface with it, and have that sort of be part of my real world experience. We obviously see Microsoft with the HoloLens and truly a very, very, very incredible and innovative piece of technology. But that then again, that will then take sort of what mobility is and what that mobile experience might look like to the next level. So I think when you're thinking about sort of these capabilities, especially the last three, as we bring those together and as we integrate those and develop applications and experiences around those, is really what it has lowered a lot of these barriers that previously prevented more mainstream adoption, more mainstream opportunity around mobile solutions. So a couple of so what, or a couple of obvious statements, but I'll share some statistics with you anyway. We're a market research company, so we like to do statistics. mobility, obviously, when you're looking at organizations and you're looking at sort of IT investment and IT investment priorities, mobile over the last handful of years has been, top 5, top 6 in terms of investment priorities. Both from the standpoint of workforce productivity initiatives, but also from the standpoint of engaging better with customers, delivering better service, et cetera. So when you're looking at the workforce today, we estimate that roughly about a third of the workforce, or about 1.4 billion workers, are what we would consider mobile workers that are spending significant percent of their sort of day in a mobile capacity. Now those might be office dwellers and corridor warriors, but they're spending a lot of their day on their feet or going from one place to another. Now of that 1.4, 1.5 billion workers, approximately, I would say 25-30% are what we would classify as workers that are a little bit more mission critical or business critical. So these are the line of business workers. These are your police officers, your warehouse workers, your service technicians, your nurses and physicians. So these are the individuals that are providing those critical services to essentially, to keep the lights on, or as we were talking about before, make sure the networks are running, and doing so in a significant way. And so this is really where a lot of the most sophisticated mobile investments have happened, and a lot of the most significant investments in mobile technology have occurred. But one of the things that we've seen, and I guess that you can interpret this slide in two ways. I end up interpreting it as opportunity for improvement, is that the level of satisfaction that we're seeing today in the mobile solution to support that frontline worker is mixed at best. Only about 40%, or 4 in 10, are satisfied or very satisfied with their mobile solution. So we're seeing a lot of what we would classify as legacy mobile solutions that are still architected on some of these older platforms that tend to be very text-centric, that tend to be keyboard-centric, that are running on platforms. A lot of them, quite frankly, are running on Microsoft CE or mobile or embedded platforms that are reaching their end of life, and are not particularly intuitive, and not easy to use. The onboarding for the average warehouse worker is 3 to 4 days. Think about that from a productivity standpoint. It takes me 3 to 4 days to make sure a warehouse worker is capable of doing what we're asking them to do based on sort of the mobile technology we're putting in their hands. So we're starting to see initiatives around sort of modernization of the user experience, certainly around some of those technologies that we had talked about before, making it more intuitive, making it easier to use, and making it more or less intrusive. And this is really, again, where sort of that wearable form factor comes into play. Because when you're looking at, I'll talk a little bit about some use cases in a couple of slides, but a lot of there's a lot of technology that's being thrown out there that really isn't being used. So think about sort of the PC mounted into the service truck. That stays behind in the service truck. When that service technician is out in front of the asset performing work, that doesn't take the PC with them. All the information, schematics, and maintenance records, customer records are back in the truck. So it's not a particularly efficient application of technology. Now, it's there for a reason, but again, I think there is, in a lot of these use cases, opportunities to improve, to modernize, to create something a little bit more seamless. One of the form factors, and it's sort of interesting to me when RealWear sort of talks about their solution as a sort of a wearable tablet, solution, because tablet technology, since it was introduced, or at least since it was made popular more recently, with the advent of sort of multi-touch solutions, is quite a pervasive form factor in this mobile enterprise environment. So we see a lot of use cases for tablets, be it field service, and I don't have to go through each of these in great detail, but I think you probably get the drift, that the idea of a tablet as a portable form factor, as a form factor that provides me with a little bit more horsepower and a larger display, as opposed to something like a smartphone, if you will, or something a little bit more pocketable, enables me to, to do that job a little bit better. So we have an installed base of somewhere around 15 million tablets today, both ruggedized as well as sort of consumer-oriented tablets that are being used by many mobile workers across many use cases. But again, these are technologies that, a lot of times are, even though tablets are portable, or certainly more portable than a PC, you still have to hold it, you still have to interface with it. So we hear a lot of times, for example, airline maintenance, a huge application, a huge requirement, and one that, requires, a lot of information, a lot of checks and balances, a lot of procedural, scenarios. We see very frequently where, the tablet is left behind, the maintenance records or even sort of the blueprints are printed on a printer somewhere else and then are brought into the airplane. So there's I don't want to say that the tablet, it doesn't serve a purpose, but there are certain use cases where the limitations of having to carry it around become very apparent, especially for those workers that, again, would benefit from a slightly more hands-free scenario. And on top of that, a lot of these technologies, a lot of these tablets are vulnerable to failure just because they're being dropped. They're being used in ambient light conditions. They're being used in sort of very dirty and greasy conditions. Display gets cracked. So it's a lot of times, even though you can get some very low-cost tablet technology, you get an Android tablet for $100 these days, the usage of these in these sort of business-critical environments isn't always ideal. So where are organizations today with regard to wearable, with regard to AR solutions? And so we asked this question. I would say the results are probably a little bit, especially around AR, are a little bit optimistic. I would say the more realistic is you're probably seeing 1 in 5 organizations doing some level of evaluation. But the fact of the matter is, we're seeing increasing interest and evaluation around testing of where wearable solutions will fit within a variety of use cases. So I think the timing is very interesting because, again, wearable, we've been looking at this for years and years and years, and outside of a couple of use cases in really the warehouse and maybe in healthcare, you have these wearable sort of dongle, speech dongle type solutions. There really hasn't been a ton of adoption. And so the scalability of the technology really has limited. So what we're starting to see today, whether it's Google Glass and what they did, creating awareness, whether, whatever it is, the technology, the affordability of the technology, the maturity of the components in the technology have really opened the doors and opened the eyes of organizations in terms of what they're doing. So what are they trying to do with wearable? Why are they looking at wearable solutions? So clearly hands-free. Hands-free computing is the number one driver. I want to be able to make sure that my worker, my frontline worker, is unencumbered. Delivering contextual alerts, messages to staff. Again, when we're thinking about that mobile worker, we're thinking about all of the information that they need, both in real time and being able to share information in a much more seamless fashion. Displaying schematics, having some type of either real-time video or just heads-up schematics information, visual information, so that they can make decisions in a much more informed manner. And then there's sort of safety-related issues, being able to monitor sort of the safety status of my employees. In mining industry, for example, there's one company, they have these essentially these baseball caps with these sensors inside them where they're monitoring EKG, just to see how distressed a worker might be so that they can intervene should there be a scenario. So again, a lot of different factors that are influencing, that are driving interest. But there are limitations still. I will still say, I mean, the technology has evolved significantly, but there's still, a lot of things that we have to consider, especially when we're starting to think about overlaying information, doing some augmented reality type of capabilities. From a hardware design perspective, battery life is still a significant factor. How long and where does that battery? If I have a battery on my head, probably not the best place to put it. So you have these belt-worn batteries, but you want to be able to, and that was one of the big issues with Google Glass. I mean, it was 30 minutes and it was dead. You want to be able to support a full shift. So battery performance is absolutely critical. Health and safety. I mean, this is something that hasn't really been perhaps evaluated. If I'm, the ergonomics of the solution is very important. What are the long-term effects, if there are any, in terms of wearing this technology? So that's certainly something that organizations are mindful of. Regulatory impacts is there any union-based or other types of regulatory perspectives? And also from the standpoint of, if I give a warehouse worker or a field service technician who's on top of a telephone pole technology to wear, that's one thing. But if I'm wearing technology and I'm interfacing with my customers, the societal discussions around that are also something that needs to be addressed. As are the investment costs. I mean, there's still, especially when we're thinking about holographic computing. I mean, the investment cost of some of these solutions are still critical. So a couple of quick sort of use cases as we go through these. I'll start with the warehouse just because we've done, that's really where a lot of wearable technology sort of first found its footing and I'd say first found a lot of its success. And that was really around voice-based applications for voice-based picking. So we've seen organizations benefit in terms of productivity, in terms of accuracy, through voice-based solutions that have been deployed. But now we're starting to see, again, so that's very sort of one way and pretty simple solutions. Tell you where to go, tell you what to pick. But a lot of times, the instructions aren't very clear. There's no visual cues. So people are looking for more information. So looking for vision-based picking solutions, for example. Then looking for other types of warehouse operations, especially in terms of safety. If I'm driving down with the forklift truck, I want to make sure I know where the location of other workers are so when I come around a corner, I'm not going to hit someone. Freight transportation, we're seeing a lot of interest in using wearable cameras and wearable solutions for load planning, for load optimization solutions. So again, the idea that that you can address that through wearable solutions. And then the last issue, and this is again the customer-facing one, the more tricky one, is sort of that last mile of delivery. Another area where we see, and this is probably a little bit more, aligned with the RealWear solution and sort of the value proposition is really around field service and the field service environments. And here, the pressures that field service organizations feel is really being able to respond quickly and to exceptional or unexpected events. Being able to communicate better. So, one use case or one thing to think about is in today's industrial environments, in today's manufacturing environments, there are probably about 50 billion machines deployed in manufacturing environments today. Those 50 billion machines represent about $400 billion in annual maintenance costs. When you think about a large industrial facility and the number of maintenance runs that typical workers have to do, you might have 400 different maintenance routes and with about 90,000 different maintenance checks. So thinking about location, thinking about information about particular assets to manage compliance. I mean, these are all huge, huge problems and huge, huge issues that organizations are facing today. Real-time issue resolution. I don't want to have to go back. If I can get the information at the right time, for the right purpose, I think that issue resolution is going to come down significantly. Another one I think that's important to point out, we talked about a little bit is about the worker safety. I want to make sure that my workers in these environments, especially when we're thinking about oil and gas environments, and when we're thinking about other sort of hazardous environments, we want to maintain and make sure that that our workers are safe, because the costs certainly and consequences of accidents are extremely significant. So again, this is, areas where organizations are spending a lot of time, a lot of budget, directing a lot of attention to. It's hard to talk about this without talking about IoT, certainly, and sort of the instrumentation of a lot of these physical assets. I think that goes certainly hand in hand. As we have more information, we can be a little bit more proactive. But it's also, the combination of that with wearable solutions. So I'll leave you, Boeing's, another, sort of very good use case. They've been doing a lot of trials for, the last about 10 years, looking at wearable technology within the maintenance workflow. And what they're trying to do, in terms of their initiatives with some of their wearable investments, is really about, complex low-volume processes that require frequent consultation and interfacing. So if I can find a way to address that, to make that a little bit more seamless, that's extremely important. See what I see. So the real-time video streaming to someone with some additional intelligence, some additional information to be able to address that. Hands-free work instruction. So again, all of the as-to-be-expected use cases that they're doing. There was another interesting use case that I just came across the other day that was at Newport News shipyard. So this is the shipyard that builds, sort of massive destroyers and airline hangars and just massive ships. And one of the issues that they had was locating steel in the shipyard. And so they have about 100 tons of steel that goes into some of the ships that they're building, and it would take them previously about 36 hours to locate all of this steel. And they're now using wearable solutions and with some AR overlays and identifiers to be able to turn that into basically a 90-minute problem. So they've gone from 36 hours to 90 minutes in terms of being able to identify where all that steel ultimately is. So I'll leave you with just a couple of closing thoughts. Maybe this is what we once thought it would look like, but it really is, it really is a time where I think we're starting to see sort of the combination of a lot of trends that are really opening up the opportunity for wearable. So hopefully this isn't a too direct representation of what a wearable solution looks like today. But I think again, thinking about the requirement of the opportunity has always been there. The technology just hasn't caught up. So we're at a time where the technology is catching up. The implementations are becoming much more real. The pain points are still the same, so they're starting to be addressed. So really an exciting time to start looking at how the evolution of wearable and the application of wearable solutions in our enterprise space is going from here. So thanks again for your time. RealWear team, thanks for the invitation. I'll be around if you have any questions, but appreciate the time.
Our hands, since the dawn of time, they've been our tools. In turn, those tools have shaped us. It is in us to use our hands. Now, it's time to free them. Introducing a completely hands-free experience from RealWear.